Give it your best shot.
Whiskey, whiskey, you should never drink alone. Whiskey, whiskey, you should never drink again. You talk into your mic, acting like you have the right, but no one cares what the hell you're saying. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. It is I, your host, Mr. Sean, here with another episode of Whiskey Ramblings. Today's episode is about being a good person and how it's actually harder to be a bad person than it is to be a good person. People always act like it's so hard to be good in this day and age, when in reality, the difference it takes to be bad versus being good is a lot like how it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile. If you actually have to go out of your way to be an ass. While most times you can easily do the right thing, and even more often, you can be a good person simply through inaction, choosing not to be a bad person by doing nothing. And that's kind of what we're going to riff on today. But of course, before we get into all that, just give me a quick moment to ask you for your time, your patronage, and maybe even your business. I use this channel as a way to pitch my business, Chimera Miniatures, where I make all kinds of different miniatures, whether that be the one-of-a-kind Kit Bashed miniatures, which is of course custom repainted miniatures made from the bits and pieces of other miniatures, or one of my specialties is also not safe for work repainted miniatures. So do you just love certain characters and just hate the fact that they have all that pesky clothing on? Well, my miniatures can correct that for you. All of these, of course, are available on eBay, Etsy, and Mercari, and if you'd like to support the channel, but you don't wish to actually purchase a mini, you can help in a couple of different ways. You can join the Patreon. I have 3 different tiers, $3, $5, and $10 a month tiers. Each have their own unique rewards. Or you can just, as always, like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and of course pass the video around. The more people that see these videos, the more minis I can potentially sell, the more patrons I can potentially gain. And with that being said, let's talk about being a good person. People like to talk about being a good person as if it requires some great sacrifice, as if you have to basically martyr yourself in order to be good, like it would be so easy to be a bad person. But no, you make the hard choice. You make the hard choice in this world to be good. But in response to that, I ask, what is so hard? What have you done that is so hard to do the right thing? Honestly, society is based around people agreeing to do the right thing and not be everyone out for themselves. That's kind of how society works, that we have this mutual understanding that we're not going to fuck each other over. To the point where we even have a system of punishments for those who don't comply and agree to this and make things significantly harder or worse for people, whether that be theft, assault, murder. Like, you can't, it's not hard for me to not kill a random person. Why? Because one, I'd have to exert quite a bit of effort because that person isn't going to want to be killed. And two, there's the deterrent of I don't want to go to prison. I'm not going to steal something from a store even though I want it and I don't want to have to pay money for it, because again, so that I don't screw over a shop owner and just take their merchandise, I will get in serious legal trouble if I try to do that. I'm not going to go and punch a man in the face because not only could I get in trouble, he would have every right to punch me back because I have broken the social contract where we're all going to be more or less good and not screw each other over or assault each other. And these rules aren't just in government and the government aspect of society. Religion, almost every single religion, their core tenets could be boiled down into the phrase, just don't be a dick. And I've said this in a previous video, even the Church of Satan, their motto is, yeah, you can be a dick, but there are gonna be consequences. What I'm trying to say right off the bat is that you more or less have every incentive to be good and almost no incentive to be bad. By the way, the whiskey I'm drinking right now is some Absolute Rot Gut mixed with a little bit of blood orange syrup and some citrus lemonade. So all in all, it's a pretty good mix. The whiskey is actually called Kentucky Tavern. It was bottom shelf at the Kroger, but I bought it for a very specific person. I did pour a good majority of the bottle into a decanter, put in one of those oak spirals you can buy that will age your whiskey, and just a dash of Torani's blood orange soda, and now I get to let it age for 2 weeks before I give that a try and see if I've managed to gussy up the swill, So we'll see how that goes in about 2 weeks. So how are the ways, let's look at the ways people claim to be good and how it's such a sacrifice and how it's really, I don't want to say that you shouldn't go out of your way to do good deeds, but that it's really not. Let's look at it this way. Some people say, oh, I did a good deed today. There was a homeless man on the side of the road. I gave him some money. It's like, okay, that really doesn't mean you're a good person. That means you had some change in your car. You didn't have to go out of your way to do that quote-unquote good deed. Now, there are people like my sister, who I believe is a genuinely good person, who actually does construct kits that she hands out to the homeless there, when they're on the side of the road, where there's some personal items, maybe a little food, usually not money, I don't think, but if you're just giving them whatever change is, in your ashtray in your car, not so much a good deed. It's not a bad thing, but ultimately you've not really gone out of your way. So even though I guess you could call it a good deed, it's not hard to do. Of course, there are people who go, I'm a good person, I donate to charity. That's, of course, such a sacrifice because that's money that I could be spending on myself. But no, I make the hard call and I donate my money to charity. Yes, but typically that, again, this, it's not so much altruism because you feel good about yourself. You are making the choice that you would rather donate your money. You would get more satisfaction and good feels out of giving that to a charity than you would going and buying a video game. Again, it's an opportunity cost, it's not a sacrifice. Now, if you're someone who actually donates your time and effort and puts yourself even sometimes in harm's way in order to help work with a charity, yes, you are a good person. That is a sacrifice, but most of us aren't doing that. And I'm not saying that these little effortless good deeds aren't good. I'm just saying that they're not hard to do. Let's go in the opposite. Let's say rather than helping the homeless in any way, or even choosing just not to do anything, you attack the homeless in a way. Let's say you throw a drink at them, or you're one of those really bad people and you decide to beat up the guy on the side of the road. Do you know how much more effort that takes to actively victimize an individual than it is to just simply either do a small, effortless good deed or even do nothing? Just don't make their lives any worse, and you're still, I don't know if you would call it doing good, but you're certainly not doing bad. But to be bad, to not only not help a homeless individual, but to actually make their lives worse, you have to go out of your way, whether that's calling the cops to shoo them off or actively doing something to them yourself. You have to exert more effort to be a bad person than to just be a good, or I guess neutral one. Let's look at something like being a quote-unquote Karen, where you go out of your way to talk down to either wait staff or retail workers. You're just making things difficult for people. It takes a lot of energy, time, and effort to throw a tantrum when something doesn't go your way. It takes zero effort and zero energy to take a deep breath. In fact, you're taking a deep breath, you're giving yourself energy. You gain energy by taking a deep breath and just dealing with it. Let's get a hypothetical scenario here. You go into a store because you know that they have an item you need, and you specifically went there because this is a store that has it, and you get there and they don't have it. And at this point, there's no distinction whether you've been good or bad. This is all still, I guess, neutral. So as a neutral person, you flag down an employee asking about the item because you came here for it, you can't find it. The employee goes, oh yeah, since that item's on sale, we're actually out of it, we should have some back next week. Now here's where you diverge. You can be a good person and say, hey, thank you for letting me know, do you know if any other stores in the area have this? And they'll probably say, no, I don't know that, but whatever, at least you tried. And again, you've exerted zero energy, and the world is not in any way, shape, or form worse for what you've just done. You've just dealt with a bit of slight disappointment. Or you can be the bad person. You can throw a tantrum. You can exert your energy. You can demand they check in the back. You can demand to see a manager. And you can make a scene. And in this way, you are actually going out of your way to make everyone around you miserable. And let's take it a step further. After you are, asked to leave by the assistant manager on duty, the next day you call in and bitch about how disrespected you were, that they told you they didn't have something and wouldn't accommodate you. They wouldn't go look in the back because they knew it wasn't there, probably because they've been asked a million times already today, or they just knew it wasn't in the back, but because they didn't grovel at your feet and get you the item they weren't physically capable of getting, you called in to complain. Now, not only did you exert more energy than you had to in the moment, you have decided to take time out of your day to call and continue your tantrum, and thereby continue making the day worse 2 days in a row for people you really don't have a connection with. You have gone out of your way to be a bad person. And the funny thing is that there is no incentive to act this way, because it's not going to increase your chances of getting the thing you want. In fact, it lowers them. Perfect example on the side of not being a bad person. I once went with my mother to Media Play, specifically to get a specific video game. So I go in, I don't see it, I ask a clerk, I'm like, hey man, I was looking for this game, don't see it, do you have it? And he goes, hey, our truck just came in and it's probably on there, but I don't know when we're going to get around to unloading it. Now, I could have gone full Karen. Granted, this would have been the early 2000s when the term Karen wasn't really a thing yet, but I could have demanded he go back and search, but I didn't. That didn't seem like a reasonable request, because again, this guy is just some floor clerk. He's not the unloader. And I said, hey, thanks for letting me know. Have a great day, man. Whatever. I go, my mom continues to shop. I'm a little disappointed. I'm not getting the James Bond game, Nightfire, that I wanted. But while my mom is checking out at the register, the guy comes running up to me, says, hey, we just unloaded the box that they were in. Here you go. Because I was nice, that guy came looking to see if I was still in the store. And again, if I had been a bitch, I wouldn't have gotten that game that day. People are more likely to help you when you're a good person. It's not like being a bad person gets you what you want. Now you're probably saying to yourself, Mr. Sean, what about the world of business? It's those cutthroat people that get ahead, that are only out for themselves, and that's how you make it rich, by, stepping over everyone you need to, and that's how you make it big. Well, if you say that, then I say you're getting all of your business tips from either 80s movies or The Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, sometimes do people who are, the charming psychopath type who put themselves above everyone else but just have an insane amount of charisma get ahead? Absolutely, that does happen. Sometimes good things do happen to bad people, but that is not the norm. As someone who worked with and for a lot of quote-unquote bad people, I can tell you that while they might put on this idea, this image that they're doing great, most of them are ultimately very miserable. And a lot of them, they will get to a certain level of success, And then that stops. They're never going to get beyond that because the higher ups know, yeah, this guy's good at what he does right now, but we don't trust them beyond that. I worked for a guy who micromanaged everything. He thought he knew everything, and he thought, I am the big cheese. He was the store manager when I worked at Giant Eagle. But here's the thing. He sucked at his job. He didn't promote from within. He tried to take the easy way. He would screw over people to make things slightly easier for himself. And what did the company do? They put him in some know-nothing, low-volume, middle of nowhere store where ultimately he couldn't hurt the company. And likewise, no matter what he did, the store wasn't going to do all that well, and his bonus was going to be minuscule. He told the company, I want a bigger store, I want more to do, and they basically told him, well, maybe you should retire. Sometimes knowing the right people or just saying the right things can get you ahead a little bit, but the cap is finite, and you have to do so much to maintain that, to maintain this, to one, go out of your way to keep down the people that you see as beneath you, rather than, if you see someone is doing good work, the easiest thing is, if you're able to, promote them, because they're a good worker, and if you give them more responsibility, more pay, they're going to take that as a sign of your faith in them, and they're going to work that much harder. Meanwhile, if you tell them, no, sorry, I just can't, we can't afford to lose you in the position you're in right now, which is exactly what this guy told me, well, that person is no longer going to go above and beyond. They were going out of their way to be an extra good person in one of those cases where doing the right thing is a sacrifice, putting the business above yourself and all that, but you've told them, you have taken the issue of going, your efforts mean nothing to me. So guess what? They're not going to give you that effort anymore. So in essence, you've just made your life that much harder because the person you relied on is no longer reliable. You decided to kill the golden goose, and that one is going to make your life that much harder, and it's going to limit what you can achieve. So ultimately, you are doing a lot more and ultimately getting a lot less in return. Of course, there are people that, do terrible things and become hugely successful, like Jeffrey Epstein, who, but then, he totally, then you end up not killing yourself like he did because you put yourself in great danger doing the wrong thing. Especially when you do the wrong thing with people who have a lot to lose, because society likes this idea that we're all agreeing to do the right thing and help each other. And even powerful people who constantly do the wrong thing, they put so much effort into bringing out this appearance that they're doing the right thing. They might as well just do the right thing. It's like they have everything to lose if society is made to understand that they are not good people, that they are the bad people, that society actively tries to not be, that you, having been in a situation where you could potentially out them as bad people, well, they might just make you not kill yourself. So again, you risk your life by being a bad person versus just doing the right thing and not having that danger. And looking at things from an even lesser stakes in the world of business, it's so easy to just put your time in, do your job, get your pay, and go home. The people who are the laziest spend more effort and energy trying not to work than they would just getting a job and doing that job. And some of them have jobs. Like we've all had that coworker who will do whatever it takes to not do their job. Like there was this one woman that I used to work with, and her name was Pam. Not changing that name. Fuck you, Pam. If she sounded like Roz from fucking Monsters Inc. Mike Wazowski. That kind of a person. She worked so hard at not doing her job that it was actually easier for us to do our jobs on the days she just didn't show up rather than the days she was there. She was putting so much effort into being lazy that she was actually making it harder for us to work with her than to just work without her. And I'm always amazed by this, how much people both legitimately and criminally put effort into trying to not do an honest day's work, because ultimately the reason you don't want to work is you are lazy. But it's always funny that you put more effort into being lazy than you would into actually working. When I bought a PS3 on eBay back in the day, I realized that I had bought it from a pawn shop that was about a 20-minute drive from where I lived. So I messaged them up. The day they were going to ship it, the pawn shop was not in a great area of town. If you're in the Columbus area, it was at the corner of Morse and Cleveland Avenue. Not the best part of town. It's a little better now than it used to be, but back then it was fairly sketchy. So normally I'd just be like, yeah, let's let them just ship that to me. It had free shipping, why not? But it was pouring down rain that day. And so part of me thinks, one, criminals are lazy. They're not going to be standing out in the rain so that just to mug somebody. A couple of bucks, not worth getting wet over. So I'm like, I'll probably be safe if I drive down there. And two, I just didn't want it to potentially get damaged, it being, a sensitive piece of electronic equipment, being mailed through the post office, who are comically inept some of the time. So I drove down there, and it's pouring down rain. Of course, there's no hoods or any sketchy looking people hanging around this pawn shop. I walk in, and first of all, the guy behind the counter looks like Hulk Hogan. So already my day is better because I've met a Hulk Hogan lookalike. As I'm picking up the PS3, because I had messaged them beforehand going, hey, do you mind if I just come pick this up? And they said, sure. So I noticed that behind the counter is somebody has taken one of those Game Boy display cases from like the 90s, like Toys R Us would have had. And they've converted it into a mini fridge. And I look at the guy and I go, hey, how much is that? And he looks at me and he goes, oh, that's not for sale. That's where I keep my lunch. And I feel this utter sense of disappointment going, but I want that to be mine. I want my lunch to be kept in that, because my food would taste so much better coming out of a giant Game Boy. And all of that is to say, I didn't end up with it, unfortunately, but that I just knew that because the weather was bad, I would be able to go to that sketchy part of town unaccosted, because nobody's going to wait out in the rain to mug some random dude. Because criminals are ultimately criminals because they think it will be less effort to get rich committing crime rather than doing an honest day's work, which is funny when you consider how much extra effort they have to do and how much they can potentially lose rather than just working a 9 to 5. Alright guys, and now that I have had time to ramble, the whiskey has had time to take effect, we're going to get to the final thing I want to talk about with this video, which is of course one of the things about being a good person versus being a bad person. And the idea that the misconception people have that it's really hard to do the right thing, when in all honesty, it's actually very difficult and a lot more effort to do the wrong thing, whereas to do the right thing, all you have to do is nothing. And this is, of course, the topic of infidelity, aka cheating. Now, infidelity is a very controversial. I don't know if that's the right word. The whiskey's starting to kick my ass again. It's a very divisive topic. I know some people who have been cheated on choose to forgive their partner and be like, hey, we all have moments of weakness. I still love them and we'll get through this. Personally, for me, infidelity is pretty much a deal breaker. Like, I'll put it to you this way. The woman I am going to marry as of today, just under a month, is bisexual. And I have told her that if she ever feels the need to be with a woman, she has my blessing, so long as she sends me pictures. What can I say? I support my woman, and I am a perv. But were she to sleep with another man, I feel like that would be the end of our relationship. And when we got together, I was a virgin, and she was not. And she has told me that if I ever feel like I am missing out, and that I want to sleep with some other woman, she would support me. But personally, I don't feel like I could go through with that. I feel like even with her permission, that would still be infidelity, and I just don't agree with that. Some people can forgive cheating, some people can't. And personally, I am in the latter, and I don't understand the former. And ultimately, none of what I just said has anything to do with what I am about to say. Thank you, whiskey. But many people act like it is so hard not to cheat on their partner. I have listened to people talk completely candidly about how hard it is not to cheat on their partner, and almost in this way that they have almost like this martyrdom complex of, it's so hard not to cheat, but I make that sacrifice. I resist the urge because I am a good person. When in reality, not cheating is the easiest thing in the world. All you have to do to not cheat on your partner is simply not have sex with somebody, which, as someone who very easily didn't have sex with anyone for the first 30 years of my life, I can confirm it takes minimal effort to not have sex. But I remember sitting around a bonfire with other individuals. I was probably the most sober of all the individuals. The other ones were quite drunk. But one of them, who shall remain nameless, told me that he loved his girlfriend. He was thinking about proposing. But there was this one girl at his work that, he, as much as he loved his girlfriend, it felt like such a struggle to not make a move on that. But he was a good person, and he fought down those urges because he would never do that to his girlfriend. And he talked about this like it was just this simple idea that the temptation to cheat was everywhere, and that a man just had to fight through it. Likewise, I once knew this girl who, to put it politely, was promiscuous. Cheated on every boyfriend she'd ever had. And not even just full-on sex, like she would just kiss another guy or whatever. But I remember one of my friends was obsessed with her. Another one of my friends was dating her. And when that friend was dating her, one night she decided that was the night that she was going to lose her virginity. So she called him up, said, "Hey, why don't you come on over?" We were in high school at the time. he was at work at the time too, during the weekday. So he said, hey, I have to finish my shift, and then I have to go home and finish like an assignment for class, but we'll hang out on the weekend, not thinking anything of it, because she didn't tell him her plan. So instead she called up some other random guy, went to the movies with him, and fucked him in her car. And my friend only found out because that guy confessed to him when he saw on MySpace, which dates this story, that they were in a relationship. So she went on, after she got the taste for some sexy, she would go on to cheat on every boyfriend she ever had. My other friend was still obsessed with her, and unfortunately, even though they ended up being roommates for a time, he never got to hit that, much to his chagrin. But before all that happened, one time, before I went into work, I was about 18, 19 at the time, I wanted to hang out with him a little bit before I went to work, and he happened to be at her house. I wasn't a big fan of hers, but I was like, well, I want to hang out with my friend, let's do this, the idiocy of youth. So we're there, we're hanging out, I'm talking to my friend, I'm making small talk with this girl I don't really care for, and for some reason, my buddy has to leave. Now, I am left with two choices. I can just head to work, where I'd basically end up spending an extra 20 minutes in the break room of Walmart, which is nobody's idea of a good time. Or I could make small talk with this girl that I really didn't care for. I went with the latter because, it was still better than the Walmart break room. So we chat for about 10-15 minutes, and then I leave to go to work. I turn my phone off because, not allowed to have your phone on at work, and my shift actually ended at around midnight. And so my shift ended, I drove home, didn't bother to turn my phone back on because I was going straight to bed, and in the morning, I turned my phone on, and there is a voicemail message from this girl. And in this voice message, she is sobbing, because if I hadn't left when I did, she was going to do something that she regretted, meaning that she was going to basically try to jump my bones. And I called her up and I had to lay it out on the line for her. I said, you realize I don't want to sleep with you, right? And she goes, well, what does that have to do with anything? And that's not me misreading the message. She was going to try and have sex with me. But in her mind, sex was just something between two people that if one person tried to initiate sex, there was nothing the other person could do about it. It was just going to happen, which is a really fucked up mentality to have on that. But all of that is to say, is to commit the act of sexual intercourse with somebody that is not your significant other, knowing full well that it is more than likely going to upset your significant other, is not something that just happens. You're not just in a room fully clothed with another individual, and then suddenly, before you know it, in the blink of an eye, you're inside of them. In order to cheat on somebody with somebody else, you have to, 1, pick a target or have that target pick you. You have to initiate verbal or physical or some kind of contact interaction with them. You have to remove or otherwise unzip, alter some level of your clothing in order for the necessary parts to be exposed. And then you have to actually commit the act of fucking that other person. Now, at any of these times, sometimes and that's assuming you're in a private setting to begin with and you don't have to go to a secondary location in order to have the privacy needed to commit this act. Now, at any one of these multiple steps, you could simply go, you know what, it's probably not worth it to do this. You have to take so many extra steps in order to cheat versus doing nothing, in which case you won't cheat on anybody and your conscience will be clear. And let's say this isn't just a one-time thing. You have to put so much effort into concealing an affair. Hiding text messages or phone calls, hiding payments in case if you get them a gift or if you have to rent a hotel room. Finding an excuse for the time, either one, renting a place for you guys to hook up, or two, just lying to people about what you're doing in the time that you're actually just, committing infidelity. That's a lot of work. Like I've always said, while I do not wish to have a mistress, I wish I was making mistress money, which is to say, I wish I had made enough at my job to afford a wife and also a girlfriend. Because that's just more money. That you understand the amount of extra money that would be that I could just spend on me and my soon-to-be wife. Like, I don't know how people afford a mistress. It just seems like you'd have to put so much effort into cheating versus just doing nothing and thereby not cheating. This story that I'm about to tell you, it's not really cheating, but it took place my freshman year of college. So I was a loser who didn't drink, didn't hang out with people, and was suffering from severe depression, and my roommate was in the National Guard, so needless to say, neither of us were drinking. But it was St. Patrick's Day at Bowling Green State University, yes, VDSU, but we were like, hey, there's probably a lot of drunk people downtown, we could at least go and people watch. And so as we go downtown and it is clear there are a ton of drunk people, this girl walks up to my roommate, and I'm not at all jealous that she walked up to him and not me. He was the clearly more attractive individual. And she tells him, "Kiss me, I'm shit-faced." He politely declines. He tells me that, he wondered how many other guys she'd said that to. So she takes 2 steps away from him and proceeds to just hurl projectile vomit onto the street. And the only thing I can think to say to him is, wow, dude, that would have been in your mouth. Literally, this guy just lived the scene talked about in Signs. And he almost, if he'd made the wrong decision, that would have been traumatic. But yeah, it cost him nothing to be a good guy. And in all honesty, it saved him. And honestly, that's what I've got to say about all this, guys. Do you think I made my case? Am I full of shit? Let me know in the comments, Even if it's a negative comment, it all helps the algorithm. So please tell me, do you agree with me on this? Do you think it actually is easier to be a good person rather than a bad one? Or do you think that people are bad because it's easier? Again, you know my opinion. I think people who are bad go out of their way to be so, and they're actually making their lives harder. But who knows? Maybe I'm full of shit. Maybe that's the whiskey talking. Anyway, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check the links, join the Patreon, buy a mini, and as always, please join me for the next video. Until next time, everybody, I'm Mr. Sean, this is Chimera Miniatures, and I sincerely hope that you alpha great day and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye.